is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Shannon, thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's get this out of the way up front. You and President Trump not always fans of each other. He posted on social media earlier this year, he's one of the most liberal lunatics ever to run for office. A phony radical left fool whose poll numbers are terrible and getting worse. The New Yorker said just a couple of weeks ago this, in a recent text exchange, Kennedy told one person that Trump was a terrible human being, the worst president ever and barely human. He is probably a sociopath. Now, I haven't read your text, so you can speak to that, but how did you get from that position to Friday night?
Well, you know, it became clear to me that I did not have a path to victory. 16 months of censorship, of not being able to get on any network really except for Fox. And I had, in fact, when Ross Perot ran, in the 10 months that he ran, he had 34 appearances on the networks. I had 2 appearances in 16 months. So I was blocked out from the networks. I was blocked out from the debate. I had no path to victory. President Trump had been reaching out to me, and I talked to him a few hours after the assassination attempt, and we had a long conversation by phone. I then had 2 extensive meetings, and there were issues, the broader issues that were most important to me, the ones that brought me into the campaign, which was ending the Ukraine war, ending the censorship, and protecting children's health. We're all reforming our food supply, all the things that we need to do to make our children healthy again. Those are all things that President Trump also wanted to work on. And he invited me to form a unity government. We agreed that we'd be able to continue to criticize each other on issues on which we don't agree. But these issues are so important in their way of unifying our country.
What he's talking about is like an effective blockout of all third-party candidates in mainstream media. One might say it's because they don't have enough juice and momentum. Others might say that the reason why they don't have enough juice and momentum is because they never actually reach a broader audience. It's like you never hear from Jill Stein, period, actually. That's it. That's the end of what I was going to say. Unless you're in this community. Or it's because MSM isn't obligated to show them. Yeah, but also like there's definitely, if you're a third party guy, you're seen as a spoiler in general. The American media absolutely keeps up the duopoly, and the only way you can escape that duopoly is if you try to like make a name for yourself in independent media, which is barely going to help you with like 6%, which is where he was at. Just the way that our electoral structure works, it doesn't matter. You know, you're never gonna cut it.
We need in this country to reach a point where we love our children more than we hate each other.
How come Jill Stein only pops up once every 4 years? You never see her anywhere else. Is it really the media blocking her? Is it because she's a phony? I don't want to get into the Jill Stein narrative, but you're not wrong, even though you are Lib Drive, one of the biggest liberals in this chat. This is one issue where you're correct on. Well, I guess there's a little bit of an exception with Jill Stein this time around because she actually did participate in the Palestine protests. But beyond that, yeah, she doesn't do shit. No interest. Like the American Green Party in general has very little like momentum in local elections in areas where they could actually have like significant more momentum, like smaller races. It is legitimately ridiculous that you just rally every 4 years instead of campaigning all of the other times when you should be campaigning. And yes, I do think that she is a grifter. That's it. That's how I feel about it. That's why I don't usually talk about it. It's fine if you want to vote for her. You know, she went to the Palestine protest. That was like one of the few instances where she actually was, like even before this election cycle. DSA and working families have done more for people than Green Party done in their entire history besides take money away. Yeah. Like there are places, if you are very serious about like building a resilient movement as a third party, you should be out there looking for like local races. Explain though, people are actually drawn to her. What do you mean? It's because people are desperate, dude. People are desperate for someone to say the things that they want to hear. That's it. That's all it takes. Is it grifting or is it just listening to what people think or want? Yeah, no, you're right. It's actually what people want. What people want is like a third party that only comes around every 4 years. Like that's what people want. They're like, hey, can you please like not be an advocate in any other circumstance with the exception of Palestine? I'm going to keep reiterating that because she has actually been active at Palestinian protests even before the election cycle. But it's like, I'm sorry, she doesn't have no Jews. There are areas where she could at least like build some kind of constituency, build some kind of momentum. It's a party, you know? Go run for local office. Go run in smaller elections. Build a base of support. Show that you are capable of winning shit. It's crazy. They should have been like the British Greens, completely different with them. Yeah, like Greens are oftentimes seen as a spoiler in the Western world, and or kooky in general. But the lawmakers are removing options arbitrarily. Okay, you're talking about Georgia, and you're talking about it because Tuesday, you are obviously the #1 advocate for the PSL. And let me tell you something. You're not wrong. We're not talking about the PSL though, even though the PSL has similar issues as well. They're more so an important voice in activism and organizing in general, not so much when it comes to like actual politics in general. Green Party's even worse than that. Green Party's even worse than PSL. Jill Stein wasn't even at the Palestine protest. No, she's been around. Like she's gone to like other Palestinian protests and shit and shown support, but it doesn't matter. The Jill's 9/11 trutherism bullshit was whack as hell back in 2016 as well. Yeah, I don't really care about that. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? You know this already. I think that every woman is allowed to have one incredibly kooky opinion.
Unifying theme that I think a lot of people could get around. It's how we get there. That's always the devil is in the details. Have you all negotiated over or talked about a cabinet position, another position within?
I'm not comparing the PSL to Green Party. If I were to make that comparison, I would say that the PSL is significantly better. What are you talking about? I literally hype up the PSL all the time. So much so that you have PSL Endies in the chat constantly chirping at me and saying ridiculous shit like the PSL is more organized than the DNC. Okay, now you're delusional. You did it. You reached the point of delusion. Okay, so then they're the biggest losers on the planet? Like, what argument are you making? I'm saying they shouldn't be removed from the ballot. I agree with you.
A Trump government in exchange for your endorsement?
No, there's been no commitments. But I met with President Trump, with his family, with his closer advisors, and we just made a general commitment that we were going to work together.
What about the states where you're trying to get off of a number of swing state ballots to say, I'm going to stay on a number of state ballots, but in these swing states, I'm going to try to withdraw myself and ask my supporters, or at least you're telling them, think about supporting President Trump. Did you negotiate over which states you would try to withdraw from?
Yeah, I mean, we all knew which states they were. They're basically 10 swing states.
PSL is Party for Socialism and Liberation. Whenever you go to a left-wing protest and you see the Babas Noye whatever font on a fucking neatly designed placard, know that was probably done by a PSL member. Yeah. PSL member here is a contrast that we know the elections are rigged and use it as a way to spread the message and build ranks when people tune into politics. In other times, and even still now, we're on the ground for all local issues and doing actions, raise class consciousness until revolutionary conditions. Yeah, I agree with you, which is precisely the reason why I don't usually shit on or criticize PSL ever, unless there's like a really annoying chirper in the chat like Tuesday who does not shut the fuck up about PSL. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I will always give PSL credit for being at the forefront of political activism. I just mentioned that already. They're great organizers in general.
Where my presence in the race would have helped Vice President Harris and would have harmed President Trump. So I'm going to get off the ballot in those states, and then we're going to stay on the ballot in 30 states. And, I'm encouraging people to vote for me in those states. Those are states with the votes. They're either all red or all blue states where their votes are not going to change the outcome of the race. But in the
what a weird way to. What are you doing? How strange.
States where I would have been a spoiler, I'm going to get out. So it's about 10 states.
Okay, so there were reports a couple weeks ago citing an official from your camp and also a Democratic official saying that there'd been outreach to the Harris camp as well to possibly discuss you working within the Harris administration in exchange for an endorsement of her. Is that true? And what happened with that?
I reached out to them on the same basis that I reached out to President Trump, and we actually talked to other presidential candidates, including Chase Oliver and the Libertarian Party, about figuring out ways that we could end the polarization and the hatred and the vitriol, start talking about issues. And,
PSL also doesn't cooperate with other socialist organizers and literally defends all the worst shit socialists have done. Yeah, I don't care, dude. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to keep it $1.50. I don't care. You're talking about marginal among margins. It's silly. It's ridiculous. Unless they're straight up like a cult, like a Bob Avakian style revolutionary communist cult, like I don't give a
I was welcome to listen to anything from the Democrats that they were going to do something about the war, about the Ukraine war, about the censorship, about the child health crisis, this epidemic of chronic disease.
And yeah, PSL does work with other organizers.
That has now disabled about 60% of our kids. And when my uncle was President Shannon, only 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, over 60% do. And, it's hard to find a kid today that's not been damaged by it. And it's coming from our food supply, from pollution in our environment, from toxics in our environment, and mainly from corruption in our government that allows that to happen.
You've talked about, or there's been discussion that if you were to join the Trump administration in some health-related position, that you have real interest in dismantling things like the FDA, the CDC, NIH. You would like to see a focus away from infectious diseases to what you're talking about, more chronic diseases. Is it fair to say that you would try to dismantle some of those organizations?
No, I wouldn't dismantle them. I would change the focus, and I would end the corruption. Right now, 75% of FDA's budget is coming from pharmaceutical companies. That is a perverse incentive. In NIH, scientists and officials in NIH who work on drug development, who incubate drugs for the pharmaceutical company, get to collect lifetime royalties from those products. These are regulators. They're supposed to be looking for problems in those products. We have these agencies that have become sock puppets for the industries they're supposed to regulate. Oh, they're not really interested in public health. Everybody, the most profitable thing today in America is a sick child. Everybody's making money. The hospitals are making money. The pharmaceutical companies are making money. Even the insurance companies make money. And we need to end those perverse incentives. We need to get the corruption out of FDA, out of NIH, out of CDC, and make them function as they're supposed to function, which is to protect public health and particularly children's health.
I'm going to go back to your decision from Friday. Both you and Nicole Shanahan, your running mate, have talked about how you feel like the Democrats completely mistreated you, excluded you from the process. How much of your decision Friday is about revenge?
Bro, Trump literally accepted his endorsement, even though he originally didn't want to, specifically because you were eating away at his base. Like, what are you talking about? You recognize that? You had a phone conversation about it. He still told you to f off. Like, what the f do you mean, dude? What do you mean, dude? This makes no dang sense.
Motivated by punishing Democrats in some way?
Zero. I don't act in anything in my life. I don't act out of anger or revenge or resentment. It's a bad motivation. It's like swallowing poison and hoping someone else will die. And so I don't do it. I am very pragmatic and practical, and I am focused on one thing, which is how do we restore health for our children? And that touches many, many other issues. How do we regenerate our soils in this country? How do we protect small family farmers? The incentives are all going to commodity agriculture, and that's what is feeding this chronic disease epidemic, the processed foods that are created by commodity agriculture. So we need to do all of these things at once and to get the corruption out of the federal government and make these agencies do what they were created to do, which is...
Did you already talk about why YT so empathetic to like you genuinely want to compete with the DNC? It's because Jank has a soft spot for third-party candidates getting completely obliterated by mainstream media and being cast aside as like unserious people for obvious reasons.
To protect our health and not serve the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical companies and the processed food industry.
To be fair, he's right about the chemicals on our soil is going to actually kill us based on what's put in them, but he's still crazy. Yes, that's my anger with people like conspiratorial minded individuals like RFK Jr. in general. It's that they come so goddamn close to the truth, and they're so close. Like, they point to the truth, they point to the problem. They're absolutely on the money when they talk about like our food is poisoning us, children are sick. Like, obviously when he says that, he means like they're autistic, and that's not a consequence of like better ways of like figuring that sort of thing out, like scientific achievements in medicine, but instead it's vaccines, so he's wrong on that front. But like I said, they're good at identifying the problem, but then their diagnosis, or rather their solution to it, is insane, and it makes me so mad. How are we gonna be like, yeah, we're poisoning our children? That's why I'm going with the great deregulator. You're a charlatan. You're a clown. You have no genuinely held principles. You just are selfishly trying to maintain your relevance. And also, you are anti-medicine, dog. What do you mean? What are we talking about, dude? RFK Jr., if given more prominent position in media, would literally lead to more brain poison, would be almost as consequential and damaging as Donald Trump. He is such an insane crank. I'm sorry. I can't stand motherfuckers that are anti-medicine. It is one of the most significant reasons as to how so many dumbasses, many of them on the right, are kept alive when they would have died otherwise. So I can't stand motherfuckers who look at some of the greatest achievements in science, okay, and turn around and go, yeah, I hate that shit. It's like anti-human. Pisses me off. Good faith question. How do you see regulation as a better way to fix things? When over the last 30 years, we've had massive amounts of regulation that has helped big corporations push out small businesses. Dude, there is no way that you're a 20-month subscriber who's literally arguing on the basis of regulatory capture. There is no way, right? You think the American government actually has adequate regulations? What are you talking about? Like, what the are you talking about? It is ridiculous, dude. Okay, quick question for you. Why are food standards better in China and also in Europe than the United States of America? Why? Why don't you hold a Twitch debate instead of faking this? Because it's unimaginably unproductive. Like, minor disagreements with a 20-month subscriber should not take up an hour of the content, especially when I have a shit ton of things that I want to discuss. What? I'm just pissed. Why are we giving YouTube ads? Why do politicians need my... See, this is literally why I don't do debates on camera. Like, every person who thinks they have a thing worth a damn that people must hear oftentimes end up being a prank that just needs medicine.
This decision is not without personal cost for you. Your own family went to the White House on St. Patrick's Day, took a huge picture with President Biden, made clear who they were supporting. Friday night, your siblings issued this statement. We believe in Harrison Waltz. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. You posted on X Friday night saying you're grateful to your amazing wife because the decision that you've made is one that she's uncomfortable with. So talk to us about the personal backlash you have to deal with and moving forward.
I mean, you know, my family is at the center of the Democratic Party. I have 5 members of my family that are working for the Biden administration. President Biden has a bust of my father behind him at the Oval Office. He's been a family friend for many, many years. And my family is, I understand that they're troubled by my decisions, but, you know, I love my family. I feel like we were raised in a milieu where we were encouraged to debate each other and debate ferociously and passionately about things, but to still love each other. So, you know, they can, they're free to take their positions on these issues. There are many, many members of my family who are working in my campaign, who are supporting me. I have a very big family. There's a few of them that are troubled. But, you know, I think we all need to be able to disagree with each other and still love each other.
Wall Street Journal has this. They say it's a double-edged sword, essentially, that it may help President Trump to pick up some of your followers if they're willing to go over there. But they warn about what you would do in his administration. They say this: RFK Jr., if he's anywhere near the healthcare or environmental agencies in a Trump administration, look out. Mr. Trump's best response is to thank RFK Jr. for his support, make no promises about the future, and by all means avoid joint campaign appearances. You've already had one. Will you have others? Will you campaign for President Trump?
I'm going to be campaigning actively. I think President Trump is going to make a series of...
They're so fucking stupid. Like Benny Johnson posting up with RFK Jr. and being like, this is the new ticket. They're so dumb. I don't know how they went from JD Vance, who is a patently unlikable, charisma suck, blood boy for Peter Thiel, to somehow the actual crypt keeper. It doesn't make any sense. Who is running the show over there, man? It's actually truly insane. Like, RFK, if he didn't sound the way he does, could be a deceptively charismatic figure because of how dumb Americans are. Get with the goddamn program. We're all Americans. We're dumb as I'm sorry. You might fancy yourself to be a lot more intelligent than you actually are, but that's also a dumb trait. That's a dumb guy trait. Anyway, we're dumb, man. We're dumb as like, as an entire collective, we're dumb. We're trying our best, but we're dumb. There's no better evidence of that than like listening to RFK and going, yeah, you know what? He's saying a lot of truthful things here. It's the exact same energy as people who are like, why don't you like Andrew Tate? He tells people to work out. It's like he tells people a lot of other shit, dude. That's the problem. There's a million people that you can arrive at that don't have RFK's ass worldview that will also be like, yeah, we got to make sure the food is better. It's always these motherfuckers who are like, yeah, the food is poisoning you. That's why you need to only eat like bugs. That's why you only need to eat like the ass cheeks of a pig. That's why you only have to eat roadkill.
Of announcements about other Democrats who are joining his campaign. And I want to make America healthy again, and so does President Trump. So those are objectives.
Pillar of health.
The Wall Street Journal may be worried about shareholder value for pharmaceutical companies, and I think, I talked specifically to President Trump about that issue, and he said that he wanted to leave as his legacy healthy children, and that, that.
What I also find hilarious about RFK Jr. is that if a Republican was voting for him instead of voting for Donald Trump, the only reason why they were doing so is because they thought Donald Trump wasn't anti-vax enough. Understand that they were voting for RFK only because Donald Trump wasn't anti-vax enough, and RFK was the real anti-vax pick. So what's really funny about him is endorsing the guy who did Operation Warp Speed, who literally is responsible for the mass inoculation campaign, who has at times defended that. This is the most contradictory person on the planet, dude. He cares about vaccines, but takes TRT, steroids. He talks about American foreign wars being a massive problem and taking up too much of the budget, but is like an unconditional, massive Israel dick rider. He talks about how he's an anti-vaxxer, but literally endorsed the guy who pushed the pharmaceutical companies to put out a vaccine. It's just so dumb.